The legislation meeting is now called to order. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Kennedy. Alderman Boyd. Alderwoman Howard.
She's here. Carol.
Oh, no, well,
Alderman-
Carol?
Carol.
Alderman Howard. Alderman Honorwitz. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Murphy.
Here.
Alderman Ogilvy.
Here.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Here.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Here. Where'd she go?
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
She was here.
President Reed. Alderwoman Middlebrook. We have 7 present.
We do have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
President Reed, do you want to get up and speak on this?
Good morning, everybody.
You want to try?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I appreciate you taking time out today to talk about the issue of municipal banking. Resolution 243 is a resolution that would put together a task force to take a look at how we can leverage our dollars in the city to better address some of the banking practices that happen regularly particularly in urban areas across the country. We know that St. Louis has a very high unbanked population, over 23%. And as of the last census, of the 41 areas where 100% of the home loans that were applied for were rejected, of those 41 areas, there were all majority African American. And if we have an opportunity to leverage our economic dollars in a more effective way to address the issues of predatory lending, payday loans, and things of that nature, and give people an opportunity, to achieve the American dream, I think we should do it. So what this resolution does, it sets up a task force of professionals to take a look at banking and take a look at what we do with our deposits in the city of St. Louis and if indeed there's a way to leverage them in a more effective manner. I will tell you, it's my opinion that it would be far-fetched or that the task force would come back with recommendations that the city go out and build a brick and mortar bank. I think that's way out there. But I do believe that that there's an opportunity for them to come up with various different options for us and ways for us to leverage our economic dollars within the public banking sphere, right? That could be establishing something as simple as establishing a quote-unquote public banking department at the city. And that's not anything where you would take on customers or anything like that, but that department would work with established lending institutions and to establish policies and procedures to open up more opportunities for people to receive home loans, small business loans, and things of that nature. We all benefit by that because then it puts our money back to work in our community, opposed to putting it to work in LA, or out in New York or any place like that. So that's kind of the intent of the resolution 243. I also have with me Tom Shepard. He's been working on this for quite a while in our office, so I'd like to bring him up for any further discussion.
Sure, Tom.
Good morning, committee.
Good morning.
I could take any questions if there are any, but this is something that's being looked at other cities across the country. We definitely have some a big lack of investment in our city, especially in particular areas of our city. People suffer under predatory lending and payday lenders. There may be other opportunities to better put our public deposits to greater use for the city as a whole by looking into this. I mean, this resolution just sets up a task force of professionals, government officials to look into the idea and see if we can offer a better public benefit in general to our community by doing something a little different with our deposits and maintaining a little more control over exactly how they're invested.
I think we'll just go down the list and, I think we'll go down to Alderwoman Howard. Any questions?
I guess just at this time, what we're doing is preliminary investigating the possibilities here and then deciding if we shall move forward.
Yes.
Depending on what the task force comes back with, the board will be able to decipher all that information, but one of the things we know we'll have more information as to what's happening with banking in our city across the board. We'll have more information with what's happening with the deposits that the city currently has on deposit and those returns. We will have more information on what other cities are looking to do across the country.
And I guess the goal is to leverage our deposits to maybe guide some conversations
Exactly.
about equity and fair treatment and lending on properties within the city borders.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Lending on properties, small business loans, I mean, all of it, right?
Okay.
And we can only benefit from it. This opens up the conversation. Sorry about that.
Yes, please.
This opens up the conversation that we've needed to have for a long time. We keep, tinkering around with the edges of it, but let's have a conversation. Let's put a group of professionals together, take a look at the issue, take a look at what we're doing with our dollar, with the funds that we have, what our returns are, and what other cities are talking about. This conversation, like Tom said, is being had in cities all across the country now because of some of the things that they're seeing happen.
So this would primarily address the needs of I want to say the small lender, the smaller lender, not the big corporate developers and those types.
Yeah.
It would be more the mom and pop business kind of things and people looking to buy property and secure their futures.
Yeah, it could be that, or it's also, it's hard to get our arms around some of the data. For example, if somebody is looking to redevelop 2-3 houses in the city and they are looking at LRA properties and they go to certain parts of the city in one of these 41 areas that everything was rejected, and they put together a plan to do it and they go to the bank and they don't get the loan, right? A lot of that information we won't have. But if there's a process set up where we have, advertised programs in place, then there's a possibility that in the future we will see some of the things that we don't even see happening today. Some of the benefits, some unintended, unknown benefits we may reap through the process also.
Okay. And the resolution would cover this investigation and so forth.
Yes, the resolution would put that task force together, and the reason we have public banking, the reason we're saying Public Municipal Bank, because it gives them the opportunity to investigate the full scope of banking from top to bottom up to and including public municipal banking.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Yeah, just briefly, so ultimately, we would be using our deposits, city deposits, as like collateral to be, to filter through institutions that are already there, whatever the task force decides is the best way to do it. But the city deposits would be collateral, or the money actually used to provide these loans?
Well, and all of that stuff, all of the details like, what's the best use of dollars on, some of those, all that stuff will come out of this task force, right? Anything that we all say today, it's all completely guessing at it,
Sure,
right?
sure.
But obviously, we know that if we have money on deposit, that money on deposit, there's a potential for that money on deposit to be used for a greater benefit of people across the city of St. Louis, and at the same time addressing some of the unfair banking practices that exist, not just in the city of St. Louis, but across the country. I mean, it's well documented. And it will also open up opportunities for people who have regularly been denied, access to home mortgage loans and things, people with good credit. But because of where they're buying and the location that they're buying, it is not a good investment or a good risk for the banking industry, right? Because they are doing it to benefit their shareholders.
Yes, no, thank you very much. I definitely think it's something that needs to be explored. So I appreciate the bill. Thank you.
Alderman, Co-Chairman Ogilvy.
Thank you. I suppose there'll be a lot of questions after this committee would issue a report, probably more questions than there are today.
I think this process will take a really long time, even once we got a report back.
Yeah, so off the top of my head though, I assume the treasurer's office is designated by the city charter as the depository of funds, right?
Yeah.
So it's contemplated in this resolution that would change?
Well, we wanted to keep the language as broad in the resolution as possible, not so that we can provide a broad canvas for the task force to look at things. So if there would need to be a charter change, then that would be something that would have to be put on the ballot and all that stuff. So, but I think it's important for us to just give them a broad canvas to look at when we're looking at ways to approach this.
Sure. I guess I would just, so it sort of directs them to look at these three things: serving as a depository for city funds, hiring and managing the short-term investment portfolio, and establishing a public-facing deposits and lending division. So,
And it could be a department under the treasurer. I mean,
Yeah.
At the end of,
I mean, I guess I would just note that the first two of those things, I mean, we have a place where city funds are deposited, and I don't think we have a very, I would editorialize that the treasurer's office is understaffed in terms of managing short-term, in terms of managing the return we get on the money that's flowing through that office. So, I mean, there's already an opportunity absent, or regardless of where this resolution would go or what this task force would do, there's already an opportunity to improve on that, I think. And then the third thing, so establishing a public-facing deposits and lending division, which is what which is what a bank, what we think of as a bank. I mean, I guess I'll be interested to hear what the report is. I would worry personally that there's lots of less complicated things the city does besides banking that we don't do an A+ job at. So I wonder if we would do a great job running a bank. But I guess we can worry about that later.
And that's why in my opening, that's what, why I said it the way I did. I think that, again, banking is, especially in today's world, banking is infinite. I mean, it's extremely complex, especially with all the federal guidelines and reporting and everything else that's in place. I know the Trump administration is working to lift a lot of that stuff. I don't think we benefit because of it. I think that a lot of those regulations were put in place for a good reason. But we know that even with those things, that the system is not working for a large part of the city of St. Louis today. And a lot of the things that historically led to the underinvestment that you see has happened north of Delmar. Some of those things are still at play today. And it would be really interesting to see what this task force comes back with in terms of how we can begin to address some of those things by tweaking things here and there with what we do with our deposits.
Sure.
And just on the part about the treasurer's office and staffing, the ultimate question of the resolution is, are we best utilizing the deposits for public benefit? So if it comes out of the discussions that we can get more out of our deposits if we have more staff in the treasurer's office to better manage and better place some of these things, then that could be something that would, be an outcome of the discussions.
Sure, yeah. I guess I would I'll set that aside, I guess. I think that would be changing via charter, who manages short-term. That sounds like one thing that would be fairly complicated and like a political question.
But I think with depository, so if U.S. Bank is a depository of where the funds are deposited,
Yeah.
with a public enterprise fund or something being, serving in that role, not replacing the treasurer's authority to determine the depository.
Sure. But in terms of acting more like a bank and making loans, and using the city's own, you have to have funds or deposits that you're using to make loans. So we have a reserve fund, which it would be insanely risky to loan that money away in an investment scenario. And then we have only a few other places where we really sort of hold tax revenue, right? Like the economic development sales tax is a place where we're probably going to be sitting on some of that funding for a while for public transit or something. So theoretically there's a pool there, but making loans, banks fail, of course. They make bad loans, they go to business, they get acquired, et cetera, et cetera. We would have to be exceptionally conservative, I would think, in the loans we're making, because we can't afford to take in tax revenue, make loans that don't pay back, and then lose the city's reserve fund or lose money that...
No,
right,
and then
so,
it's just, that's exactly where we're not going, right? It's so important to begin to open up these discussions. If you're one of the families that have been affected by unfair banking practices, where you walk into a bank and you have the same credit rating as guy here, but you don't get the loan, right? So you can't fix up your house, you can't do anything, and it continues to feed on it. If you are a minority or women-owned business and you walk into the bank and you have all your paperwork, your everything in check, but because of where you're located and because of the bank's faith in you, you can't, you're not able to, get that loan. So by opening up, number one, by opening up these discussions, by having these tough discussions, and all these discussions, whether we're talking about banking, whether we're talking about housing, any of these things, all these discussions are very tough, difficult discussions to have. But I think it's important that we have them, because I think we come out stronger and better on the back end. And I think at least we're more educated about what's at play. And if we can put a group of financial professionals, including leading people from the universities, leading people in the banking industry and economic development, housing and the like, and they can look at various different things that are happening across the country and how cities are better leveraging their tax dollars for greater benefit for their community. There may be some model within that, or some combination of things within that, where we would benefit from. Obviously, we're sitting here with nearly half our tax base laying dormant because people can't get loans to even begin to develop places in north of Del Mar, because why is risky for the banks. But the upside for us would be huge. When Washington Avenue, when we began to renovate Washington Avenue, it was in the 6th Ward. And the challenge of it was that they wanted to renovate commercial buildings for residential use. So they had to pay commercial pricing for residential use. But at the time, nobody knew if we were going to be able to have the square foot for sale price that we'd have to do to reap the benefits. So as Alderman of 6th Ward, we anteed up everything because we believed that, with the plan that we had in place, if we can prove it out, that we would win. And you see, once we were able to do that, the first unit sold in record time, and then the whole place just followed from there. But those are some of that's on the other side of the coin, the other side of the benefit from it. But at the time, the typical banks were saying, well, I don't know if that'll work, because it was something that was unknown to them. So within all of that, having a group of professionals look at it and look at what's happening in cities all across the country, there may be something out there that would work better for us as a city.
So this committee will develop a written report.
Yes.
Do we need to, that sounds like it'll take some substantial time and professional effort by somebody. Do we need to fund this project? Fund this project?
We're working, go ahead.
Well, within the resolution, it gives a date of November 16, 2018, and also states that the committee, as it moves forward, can contemplate whether or not a firm,
Or a broader study would be required, and, yeah.
Okay. I would,
it doesn't call for it specifically to happen in here.
Yeah, and
It does state that the committee may contemplate it.
sure. I would think we might get a more complete, thorough, well-reasoned report if we pay somebody to.
Absolutely.
Okay. We don't have a sense right now of who the appointees would be.
Except for Gerard. Except for Gerard.
With the membership, we will provide membership openings for, if you look on the second page, the way it's phrased is said task force shall include at least one membership opening for each of the following categories. Now, whether, some of these are going to be up to the 4 elected officials that are making the appointments, whether or not they want to put someone from their office on it or whoever from their office, but it lists a set of categories different professionals and viewpoints and elected officials.
I'm going to have Gerard come up.
Okay.
And before we forget, there would be one amendment to the resolution that would clarify and state that the financial analyst would actually serve as the chair of the task force.
And then he wanted to make statements.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Good morning. I just wanted to make kind of one important point for the committee to consider. As a customer, which the city is a customer of these banks, you have the ability to make requirements of those banks to win your business. And by starting to look differently at how we approach these banks, we may be able to get more things out of them, particularly lending in areas that they're currently not lending in. A famous case is in the 1970s, Maynard Jackson, who was mayor of Atlanta, put minority and women hiring requirements on all the banks in the South. And without those requirements, they could not do business with the city of Atlanta. That forced the integration of Nations Bank, which is today Bank of America. And that was a city policy. And so basically, you as a customer, and I was a banker for many years, and my large customers would put demands on me. The bank needs to do A, B, and C, or they're not getting my business. We are a customer of these banks. We have hundreds of millions of dollars with these banks, and we have the right as a customer, a large customer, to demand certain things of them. So as you think about this process, think about it from that light.
Thank you. You know, I guess I want to just go back at least up to Scott. Did anyone have any additional questions that's already asked
have
for
one.
Gerard? And then we're going to
I think Gerard would
continue
probably,
down the line because
I think Gerard
Gerard,
might be best to answer this.
a quick question, and everybody else as we go
Yes.
down have that opportunity.
Knowing fiscally the city is pretty strapped for dollars, will there be an additional cost to this study or this looking, exploration?
Initially, no, I don't see a cost. There are a lot of partners that want to help the city. On other projects, for example, we've built a relationship with the Federal Reserve on
Right.
several other projects, and they're dedicating a lot of resources to help us in those projects. This is what the Federal Reserve oversees banks, so this is kind of a no-brainer
And
for
I
them.
think that's something that we need to be very transparent about, because with the city being fiscally in the position we are, that, it doesn't become a bone for people to say, well, why are you spending money on this when we are not getting X, or, the service is being,
Correct. I
so
agree with you.
I think that's something that needs to be very, very well articulated. Thank you.
Okay, so
Can I add to that? Thank you, Alderwoman Howard, because you raise a really good point, because ultimately, what this hopefully will lead to, if we get the reports back and they're reasonable and it's something that we all feel we can implement, ultimately what it will lead to is stronger neighborhoods, stronger communities, more active tax base across the city of St. Louis, and increased revenue. So I think that it's obviously important, and for anybody in 2018 who's taken 2 minutes to look through any data, they see how needed it is, and how working with the system, we have an opportunity to change the direction of what's currently happening.
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, I believe Alderman Navarro was next up.
Thank you. So going back to some of the things that Mr. Hollins raised, the sorts of mechanisms and negotiations that he was talking about, would that be considered in the scope of what this task force would potentially be tasked with?
Absolutely. That's why we kept the language very broad in the resolution. Because banking is so complicated, right, that if we began to really, pin it down, we may be back, could possibly be back in a month trying to redo the resolution to add something to give them, you know, a little more broader canvas to paint on, so.
Were you
can direct
specifically
it
looking for
and-
questions for Gerard?
Oh, anybody, that's why I make sure
Okay,
I stay
okay,
up there.
great. Well, and in terms of the complications and the compliance of banking, I think that's something that I would definitely want to be part of the scope of this, is not only is this a good idea, but does the city have the capacity to do this, and what would be required? Because that's going to be extremely important in terms of how much time we dedicate or commit to this and any further future steps.
Well, we have no idea what the committee may come back with. The committee could come back and say, hey, you know what, based on the information and things we've seen in other cities, what you're doing with your deposits and so on and so forth, if you guys would just put, you know, these 3 policies in place and make it plain to the banking industry and have quarterly meetings with the banking industry, that could change things, right? It could be something as simple as that. And again, you know, it's also just so important to just sit back and put yourself in the shoes of people who when they get their paycheck, they can't even open up a bank account because the bank wants to first say, okay, what's your credit rating before they open a bank account? So they become part of this unbanked population. And they show up and they have to go to check cashing places and pay, you know, exorbitant rate to cash their checks and so forth. And you know, if you are one of those families, you are saying, great, this conversation is finally being had. And again, I believe that we will benefit in some way through those conversations, but I don't have a crystal ball to tell you exactly what that will be, and what it will look like, and what the Board of Aldermen would finally look at and say, you know what, this is reasonable, we can afford this, and this is good for the city, right? But I know right now we have no idea, because we have no study, we have no report, we don't know what's going on, right? But we need a group of professionals to look at it.
So in terms of the members that would be appointed, so the treasurer's office and the comptroller's office, the mayor's office, I guess I'm assuming you've talked to all of those folks, they're all on board with this?
Here's the thing, I'm not seeking their opinion on whether they are 100% on board with it.
Well, no, I'm sorry, on board with the resolution, not on board with the public bank, but I mean.
With the resolution, I'm not seeking their opinion to see if they're 100% on board with the resolution. I'm here today with a crystal clear understanding that unfair banking practices are happening throughout the city of St. Louis, with a crystal clear understanding that when people say Black Lives Matter, doesn't matter enough to you to have a tough conversation with the very people that can begin to help Black lives, right? That's what I'm here to do today. I believe that the mayor's office, the comptroller's office, and everybody at the end of the day will agree to that. The Board of Aldermen, we're going to offer them up an opportunity to put the people on the committee, right? But none of this stuff is easy. The Missouri banking industry, none of them want to have this conversation, right? That's why it says tough conversations, but there's conversations that we must have. But it's easier to kick the can down the road if it's not affecting you directly today. But there are a lot of people throughout the city, including everybody in here, that it's affecting, because when we complain because we have to pay more for trash services, you shouldn't complain if you're not willing to look at how we can leverage our economic dollars to create a more vibrant tax base, to give people access to capital that they can't get no matter what today, right? That's what this is about.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't think anybody would say we shouldn't be having those conversations. I think what I'm trying to figure out here is this resolution setting up the most effective way to do that? And if we're going to...
What other way would we do it?
Well, no, that's what I'm just asking.
We've been, the other way, we're doing it today. It's not working. It's not working. You know, when redlining was a popular phrase, right? Because it was very easy to say, this is redlining, this is how it's happening, right? You should be shocked that 41 places, 41 areas throughout the city of St. Louis, 100%, not 80, 90, but 100% of the loans that were requested that were within those 41 areas, 100% of them were denied by banks. The banking industry, we can't blame the banking industry from the standpoint of saying that they're not doing, they're doing what they're supporting their investors, right? And if we do not place any additional requirements on them, they're not going to change. It's not financially feasible for them to change. We need to show them where it's of best interest of them, us, and the constituents that we serve, that some change happens. And we can begin to do that, but to begin to do that, we need some real data to do it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, I'm not challenging the notion or the ideas in here. I'm just, so how likely do you think it is that all of these offices that you've mentioned will participate meaningfully in these conversations? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
They will participate meaningfully in the conversations, and if they allow the Missouri banking industry to hold them back from doing that, I don't understand why they would continue to want to serve. I mean, this is why we serve. I mean, this is why we serve. We serve to begin to try to transform people's lives no matter where they live, right? And by that, we help everybody across the city of St. Louis. And the current model that we're following, that we just, every time we have a problem, we just put another tax on the ballot for people, we've run out of those, right? We're going to have to go back to the beginning and see why areas aren't being developed. We need to see why small and minority and women-owned businesses can't get loans. We're going to have to take a look and see why certain neighborhoods, if you want to buy a home or redevelop a house in that neighborhood, you can't even get the loan to do it. We're going to have that information, and we're going to have to make some tough decisions about how we can begin to change that. But we can't begin to change it if we're not having the conversations.
Right, and as the committee who's going to be getting this going, that's why I just want to get some clarification on how this is going to be set up. And so one of the questions, and so the section that talks about the members that will be appointed by the various offices is a whereas clause, but it's down in the therefore it be resolved section where it talks about the various openings. Is there a reason why those are in two different sections of the resolution? And again, I'm just getting clarity so that we can carry this out in the way that you are intending it.
All right. So you're saying that in the whereas clauses, it says, and then therefore be it resolved, because you mean, why are we talking about the appointments?
Yeah, just I just would want to make sure that if we move forward with this, that this committee is moving forward in the way that you want it to be laid out.
Yeah.
Like, what exactly are we being directed to do?
Yeah, the whereas clauses lays out the argument, lays out the reasoning why. And when you get to the therefore be it resolved portion of it, the therefore be it resolved sets out, a purpose or direction. And so therefore be it resolved that this committee is created with, the various different members, right? So is that what you're asking, or is that?
I mean, I guess I would just think that the therefore it be it resolved part is the part that is more, that's what we're held accountable to. And so the appointments come in the section before that. So I was just wondering if there was some distinction. And again, I'm just trying to make sure that this committee understands what we're being directed to do so that we know what accountability looks like.
Okay. No, it says, therefore be resolved, opportunities to establish some public sanctions, whether it says also directed the committee to be established, the committee to establish a task force as been described above.
Okay. Okay, if that's in there, that's...
Yeah,
okay.
it's
okay.
on line
Okay, I see
1,
it, I
2,
see it.
3.
Okay,
You got
great.
it?
Okay,
All
yep.
right.
Yeah, I didn't mean for that to be a difficult question. I was
No,
just
that wasn't.
making sure I understand.
That wasn't.
And then I did just have a question in the second paragraph where it lists the 11 different openings. I think it's great that there's a representative of an environmental organization, but I was just curious what you saw as their role in that, what you expected them to bring to that.
They may have an opinion or a reference point on some of the investment that some of the banks are doing, that we're putting our deposit with, some of the investments they're making, if those developments that they're investing in or that the city is investing in are environmentally sound.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, Alderwoman, I'm sorry, I got passionate about this, but, this is just one of those issues that, we've been struggling with and fighting for so many years, and it's just, it's high time that we just begin some discussions about it in an organized fashion, opposed to just continuing.
I completely agree. I just want to make sure that we're doing it, the best way we can, and I want to make sure that I understand what I'm being charged to do.
Yeah, but thank you.
So Alderwoman Middlebrook, any questions?
No questions at this time.
Then Alderman Kennedy, any questions? It went quickly over to you.
I can do it very quickly.
No, I
So-
said it quickly once you had it.
Yeah. So if I understand it correctly, the resolution is directing the committee to do two things. One, to hold some hearings itself, and then convene this task force. That's it? I just want to be clear on that.
Accept reports from the
And accept reports, right. It's an excellent idea. I'd like to be placed on the resolution.
So
I would too.
I would like, I'll actually, I'll take a motion.
I would like to make a motion to pass Resolution
Seconded
243.
by Alderman Kennedy.
Joe?
Ma-
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah,
There
but an
was
amendment.
one
amendment
Oh,
Oh,
resolution. And this is on,
okay, so you'll have to take back that, Carol.
oh,
And
I withdraw my motion.
and this is just to clarify, just to make sure the committee gets moving as fast as possible. This is adding language on the second page, at the end of the first whereas, immediately following financial analyst of the St. Louis City Board of Aldermen, just adding to that a comma, who shall act as chair of the task force. So we have it established already who's going to be starting, scheduling the meetings and coordinating things.
And then the chairman of the task force will report to the chairman.
I move for adoption of amendment number 1.
Do we want to add that, what you just said to that?
So, yeah,
That-
Terry moved that we,
I second.
we're adopting amendment to resolution
Number
243. We have a first and a second. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Kennedy,
Aye.
Alderman Boyd, Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Murphy,
Aye.
Alderman Ogilvy,
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro,
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook,
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
You have 8 ayes.
So now I'd like to entertain a motion on the passage of,
I make a motion that we pass Resolution 243
as
as
amended.
amended.
Second.
We have a first and a second. I'll ask for previous roll.
Previous roll.
Is there an objection to previous roll? Then we're done.
I want to just thank all of you for taking a step and adopting this resolution. I really appreciate it, and I also appreciate you doing it during the break, coming back to get it done. It means the world to me, so thank you.
Sure.
That's right.
Thank you.
Anyway, the meeting's adjourned. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everybody that showed up.